Hi guys, welcome to the Diversity in Filmmaking panel. I am England Simpson, your moderator. I'm also an actor, filmmaker, director, and producer.
Hi, I'm Adam York. I'm a director with the Stranger Concept Films. I've got a lot of background in lots of different stuff, mostly film and theater. I'm a professional lighting designer. And I'm a cat owner.
Hi, I'm Christina Trinity Velez Justo. I'm a composer for film and media and adjunct professor at University of North Carolina School of the Arts. So I just go around, I teach people about how to work with a composer and the impact of having original music in film.
Hey everyone, my name is Angela Pritchett. I'm an actress, special effects makeup artist, and sometimes filmmaker producer. And yeah, I have cats and pugs.
Hey everyone, I'm Asha Khai Chang, film director, producer, writer in Charlotte, North Carolina, and CEO of Love My Productions. And I'm excited to be here. I used to have fish, and I keep my plants alive.
Yay! All right,
That's
so I'm going to jump right
saying
into
a lot.
it. I have a dog, by the way. I feel like a nerd. I'm like, okay, I have a Jack Russell Terrier.
I got a kitty.
All right, so I'm going to jump right into it. For people who are not as well versed as we are as far as the lingo and stuff, how would you define diversity and inclusion in filmmaking? How does that look like on a film set, or how we as filmmakers see that? How do we play that out? How is that presented to us? So I will actually I'll start with Christina. I'll just start this way.
This way is not the same way. Don't worry about it. Anyway, yes. No, terrible. You can edit that out. Okay, Jason, great. Thank you. So diversity. I believe, or I define diversity as every color under the sun, as well as any gender or sexual orientation, or basically any kind of background, any belief, creed, not to throw Asha there because I love her so much, but for example, having an African-American / partly Asian, Latino, Jewish woman on set, as well as behind the camera, writing, producing. Like, she is the definition of diversity. And of course, any part of the spectrum as well. So, and what I mean by spectrum, not just skin color spectrum, but I mean spectrum as in, if you're homosexual or bisexual or, LGBTQ, whatever, all the colors and all the guts in between.
Awesome. Asha, would you like to add to that?
Wow, thanks to my bestie, because she definitely shouted me out better than I could have, so that was dope. I like my first mind when I think about diversity is why I love sci-fi, even though that's bad to do a genre. Mm-hmm. But I love that, for example, Star Trek teaches about, they show you different wide variety of people from different backgrounds and looks, right? And how those differences are beneficial. So that's where the inclusion part comes in for me. I'm like, we're all different, whether it's in what we believe in, our health, or, our background, how we were raised, where we're actually located, or around the world. Our world is vast, right? Heck, there's a whole universe. So to me, I'm like, I look at it as once we, yes, we know that we're different. And as long as we start welcoming different mentalities, different ways of thinking, and realizing it's actually beneficial for us to know about them and be educated about them and share stories with those backgrounds, that's where the inclusion comes in.
Awesome. Angela?
I mean, they kind of summed up anything I would say. I agree the same way. You need to make sure, like, even when you're writing scripts and everything too, that you have that inclusion in there, because if you're only catering to one audience, only one audience is going to watch. And that's one of those things where maybe you're okay with that, but why not make it broader? Why not get your art out there to as many people as you can and, appeal to as many people? But you have to also make sure you have that appeal behind the set too.
a point that goes with that is making it an authentic appeal,
Mhm.
like making sure you're not just, and I mentioned this the other night, checking off a box, like I got that diversity hire, I did it, there's my drop. So
It's tokens everywhere.
I think
Yeah,
it's
tokens.
very important not only to appeal, but to have that authentic sense of really wanting to bring in a diverse voice to work above the line in the industry. All right, so piggybacking on that, strides in representation for marginalized communities has actually increased slightly since a poll was taken back in 2018 for Variety.com. So underrepresented, racial and ethnic groups rose from 29% to 36% since 2018 and calculated 2019 film year. So do you think conversations like these being had at film festivals and conventions, do you think these conversations are working, or are we just providing other opportunities for ourselves?
I think that there are more opportunities arising because a lot of big film companies are starting grants. They're starting grants for people of color and for LGBTQ filmmakers, workers, actors, and stuff like that, to get those voices heard and to get those voices seen and out there. So we are seeing that a lot. I know like CBS does a POC call every year for scripts and for artists and stuff like that. And a lot of these are in areas where most of us are not. So they're like in Los Angeles, they're in New York and stuff like that. So you have to make sure that you are really looking for stuff like that and able to be available for stuff like that. In our more smaller communities, I see a lot of it just in conventions and stuff with filmmaking communities that are networking and being like, oh, hey, this is something I never thought about needing on my set. Maybe I need to open my perspective up a little bit and actually think about this the next time. Since like 10 years ago, working on many of the sets in state of North Carolina, it was mostly white men and a couple white women in there. So, and now I go on a set and I do see more, I could still see more diversity. I could still see more inclusion and better inclusion, like not just trying, like you said, ticking off that box.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's starting to move more. Yeah, well, yeah, I love what you said, Angela, because that's how I feel too. I feel like as there's also a rise in indie filmmakers, right? Mm-hmm. We're creating the opportunities now in I shouldn't just say our communities, like we're collected by colors, but I mean like in our communities, meaning like in North Carolina or in LA, we're starting to get together and be like, hey, we can start creating opportunities right here. And the reason why is because if you think about it, we already have diversity just creating films themselves. Like not everyone's a director. Not everyone knows how to do makeup. Not everybody knows how to do music. We already are diverse. Like, what are you saying? Like we already need diverse talents to be there. So why not have diverse people as well who might be able to add their own flavor, their own touches because of things that they've experienced. And with that, I guess just becoming more innovative, right? I'm going to say something that's kind of controversial, but like a lot of times you hear that if somebody's ethnic and they create something, it's ghetto. But once it's patented and made mainstream, it's now an invention and it's great, right? So the fact that we started kind of taking that lid off and being like, we can create films, now what? That's when we started actually having more of that inclusion on set and that diversity, and it became more like, wow, what a great innovation that can happen between all backgrounds, instead of saying that's ghetto and that's an invention.
And some of that's also the thought process around it too. Like people sit there and they say, oh, well, that's ghetto. And then they watch and they're like, oh, wait, I can relate to this. This is not that stereotype that I have in my head that has been, systematically put there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, like if you look at, just about in a little bit, Film Riot, right? I'm not sure everyone's caught it out, like we caught on to it, but they show really creative ways to, like I remember when I made my first boom mic pole, it was like one of the little painter's extension poles, and it worked, it did the job, okay? But the mic was expensive, and we invested in that, but I was like, that pole, I don't know. So I meant like in terms of like even creation, people would consider that like ghetto, and then it became like an innovative thing because we're like, We need to have access to these tools to get our stories out there. We just do. And that's like for students, like students versus somebody who's like already careered and already had all their, their money and their funds to make films. And like you said, having those grants available to us so we can actually create now.
And you go on a lot of film sets now, you'll see them doing the innovative stuff that you were just talking about, but they won't call it, ghetto or jerry-rigged or whatever.
Yeah.
They'll call it innovative or trying to save that dime.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Christina, what were your thoughts on the conversations and the dialogues that we have at film festivals, bringing this issue of representation to light?
So I appreciate you actually reiterating the question, but also you had also said, are the festivals working, or are we providing these opportunities for ourselves? My answer to that is yes, to both. Because what I have found is that because diversity is showing up in more conversations, we now have the confidence to be able to say, you know what, wait, this is an issue. Most of the times we're hushed. Oh, no, it's okay, right? That was before. Now people are actually starting to listen and encourage us to speak. So we are not only listening, right? It's like more like one is the cause of the other, but because we're hearing it more, we are now hearing it more in our heads, and therefore giving us the confidence to then create this work. So, and now people who do not fit under the quote unquote umbrella, right, of underrepresented demographics, they want to help too, because they're like, you know what? It's actually really cool to see this entire spectrum on screen. It's like one of my favorite people, Sandra Perry, sorry, some of you don't know her, but anyway, she's, a Caucasian older woman, but every single time we would have an MFS meeting, right, the Magnolia Film Society, we have so many different people of color and age groups and backgrounds, and every single time she shows up to a meeting, she says, this is fantastic. So the fact is that there are people all around, from whether they are well represented or not, that are hearing, that are listening, that are encouraging, and then those who are underrepresented are saying, I can do this. This is a thing, because people are actually not just listening, but encouraging. Now I actually have a voice.
So with that, how do you respond to critics who have problems with hashtags like representation matters or battle cries like, if you're not going to give us a seat at the table, we'll create our own table? Like what do you say to critics who always want to pinpoint, well, if you want to be validated as a real filmmaker or director or anything, then why does it always have to be about your gender or your race?
Well, I have one thing, because it's always about our race and it's always about our gender, because when we make a film, and it may be about a specific thing, like my last film was our main actress was pregnant. So I looked at her and I went, I still want you to be in the film. What are you uncomfortable with me writing? And she was just like, go for it. And so after our premiere for our film, someone literally raised their hand and said, how was it being a female and tackling a taboo subject, like by having your main actress pregnant? And I just looked at him, I was like, would you ask me that question if I was a man? Would you think it was so taboo if I was a male directing this over being a female directing this? Because that's a natural thing that happens possibly happen to my body, not yours if you're a guy, but why is that so taboo? So it's one of those things where we're having to make these opportunities, and we're having to literally fight for, not necessarily fight, but we're having to justify why we make certain decisions in filmmaking, or the way we do specific makeups. Like, oh, you're a girl, you do pretty makeup, you don't do gore and special effects. It's stereotypes that we're already living with that we have to like rise above for those, and making it about our gender, being like, yeah, I'm a female special effects makeup artist who does, prosthetics, I do monster makeup, I do all that stuff. It doesn't necessarily look like, I'm this girl showing up in like blue jeans and a pink t-shirt or something that they would expect to see. You have to show that you're above that, and make sure that they know, hey, I'm that chick in the pink shirt that just made that dude's head explode on camera, not in real life, because
or in
jail.
That'd be dope too.
You know what I'm saying. But like, it's because there are already those stereotypes in place that we have to sit there and throw those stereotypes in their faces, so they'll then be like, oh, okay, maybe those aren't the reason that,
Yeah, so I 100% agree with you. So is there any point where you feel uncomfortable having to have that role as, okay, I have to address this, I have to not only defend but explain why this is important? Do you find yourself getting tired of doing that more often than not?
I've noticed that I will randomly, if I see it happening to other people, I'll randomly call it out. I did this on your set actually once. When someone spoke over you once, and I just looked at you and I went, Miss Director, you want me to do this? Because that's not the director. So
that's that story.
I told this on another panel.
Oh really?
But yeah, it's one of those things where I've gotten to the point where I don't take crap when I'm on film sets for certain things. So if someone wants to say something like that, I will just bluntly come out and be like, no, like, don't speak over them. They're the one in charge. You're not. So, and sometimes that can get you labeled as a bitch, but also, I mean, if people know that you're going to stand up for them, that's the one thing that we've been pushed down so much and told not to speak out. But if we don't speak out, then we lose opportunities.
So what's interesting, because I had this conversation in private with Asha, I don't know, a week ago or something. I had come across a client who was basically pressuring me to get something done quicker than he had. And, this is an anxiety that I don't just face, multiple of us face, because actually, this another great example. My pit bull got attacked by another dog. It was a chow lab or something or other. But the thing is that if my pit bull had fought, my pit bull would have been the one that ended up on the article because of the bad rep that she has. Her breed has. Okay. She's a wonderful dog. So now to turn that around, if I were to speak up because I'm a woman and I'm Latina, then all of a sudden they're going to put me on the article as the bad person. Oh, well, you can't work with them because of the way she speaks out. She's too intimidating. And so that is an anxiety that I face every single time that I feel I need to speak up to myself in order for me to feel just, right? That I'm getting treated fairly in this collaboration. And so I had told that person, I said, don't rush me. The thing is that if we are to collaborate with one another, because you have a great piece of art here, and I feel that it will go very far, but if you cannot trust me and what it is that I'm going to deliver because of whatever reason, we can't collaborate anymore. And it's so hard to say that, but it has to be said, or else that person would continue to walk all over me, and I would end up I didn't put myself, I let myself into that situation. And for the rest of that relationship, it would have to start from the very beginning. It's like what I'd say to my students, but also to, actually, their students as well. I mean, there's multiple workshops, whatever. But you need to establish your boundaries and establish that connection, that conversation, that respect. Like, look, we're going to be in a very vulnerable situation here because that's art, right? Filmmaking is a collaborative process. We're all here extremely vulnerable because we are our greatest when we are our most vulnerable. That's just our creative selves. So if you can't let me speak up when I feel that, one, I'm not being heard because of my profession, right? That you are not trusting me with my profession and my skill set, but also because of whatever background, then we can't get this done. And it's not going to be very good. Right? So anyway, that's...
A question was underrepresented people, women, people of color. Why do you think some individuals in the majority have a problem with statements like representation matters, or we're creating our own opportunities, we're creating our own table since we can't get a seat at the table? I'll tell you actually where I thought of this, or why I thought of this question. It was a comment that Jordan Peele made when he was promoting Us, and how he said that his goal was to always have a man of color, like a Black man, as the lead in his film, because he's already seen a white lead in films. And so many people had an issue with it because he said representation matters. We want to see ourselves represented on screen. So why do you think so many people have a problem with us creating those opportunities for ourselves as women and people of color?
Well, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yes.
So, I mean, that's a huge question.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think what it is I think the arts have been dominated by white European males for so long that the idea, and this is all very colonial, that the idea that other people would come along and come up with something that is not only more unique or more fascinating, is actually kind of threatening to the artist mindset. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of it, and I think there's also a very subconscious thing involved in why women do have, and women do have to scream pretty loud to get heard, and all ethnicities and all minorities have to deal with some level of pushing themselves out there. I have a friend, he's an actor with Disney, and he's hands down one of the most talented performers I've ever worked with. But I noticed that he would like let me know what roles he was getting, and every single time, like, he would land the villain. It would be he was Scar, he was Captain Hook, he was, fill in the blank, this villain or that villain in everything. And I started to just notice that trend, and I think the reason he was cast in those roles, I hate to say it, was because he was Black. And that was just filling in with this mindset. And I thought to myself, this is not new, that, African-American actors have been dealing with this since they got into that situation, or since they started performing in these situations. And I think a lot of it is subconscious, and a lot of it is, I think the artist mindset feels very threatened in a lot of ways. And it's sad, and it's pathetic, and it's definitely something that needs to change. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of glass ceilings that just need to be shattered out there. For me, it's actually kind of interesting because I've been, I've tried my best to be an advocate for a lot of different things throughout my life. But now, as I had to see the world as someone with a disability, so I'm in my own minority world now, looking how people treat me differently because I'm on crutches, or because I happen to leave my leg at home or something like that. So it's been a very interesting transition, going from a cisgendered white male into being visually different and in a different category from what the other jocks out there think is normal. Mm-hmm. So does that, am I getting at the question there?
Yeah, you absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I'm going to spin the phone real quick. Watch this. So, and it doesn't work. So sorry, I've been having all kinds of technical problems today. The thing about it is, I don't think, I think especially for a lot of artists, you don't confront these things about yourself until you're in that situation. Until you are casting, or until you're working on a payroll, or until you're doing something where you can outline that, I'm being sexist or I'm being racist. you aren't really aware of it. I mean, and I have lots of friends who just will say the most horrible things without thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's frightening. And I'll call them out on it, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, I really just said that." I'm like, "Yeah, you did." So, we've got a long way to go with a lot of things, and I think awareness for some is going to have to be the first step, to be aware. And and that's where it came from me. At one point I remember I was doing a payroll, and I was paying all my crew a general flat rate, but I had like 3 women on the crew, and I was like, oh, well, I can pay them $25 less. And then I thought to myself, oh my God, where did that come from? Some of them are working twice as hard. Why am I not giving them $25 more? So that's what I ended up doing eventually. But, that's just a quick example. Yeah. So horrible as it sounds. But
actually, I just wanted to bounce right off of that. Just one thing. People are comfortable with what they're familiar with.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so that's in every kind of aspect, whether it is racism, whether it is, only finding Caucasian male composers, directors, editors, producers, you name it, right? Or having a woman do just the pretty makeup, right? People are comfortable with what they're most familiar with. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, no, seriously, that happened to me. Something similar, this is where this question came from, happened to me actually on a panel last year for Con Carolina. I'm not gonna say the panel, not even gonna say the person's name because every single one of us knows this woman. But they just were not here for it. Because they had the privilege of not dealing with, certain, especially when it came to casting, certain, obstacles that women of color would have to deal with. It was just not, since it's not their truth, it wasn't the truth. So they were like, no, and they just told me none of that's happening. Oh, I'm a casting director, and I'm telling you that doesn't happen. And then you're like, sure, I've been acting for 20 years now. Yeah, it does. And she was like, no, it doesn't. I'm a casting director, so and that's not how we do it. And I'm like, sis, I've seen your resume. You don't cast Black people. I'm just telling you that right now. So and my friend had to get me out of there because I was feeling away. So that's where that question came from. She just had blinders on, and she was not willing to let that ego go and look from a different perspective. She was not willing to do that. Like I said, I ain't gonna call nobody out because we all know this person. All right, Asha, would you like to share? Or you're like, nah, I'm good, I'm Gucci.
No, okay. So I'm so happy that you guys all shared first. I'm too much of a prankster / little jokester about things. So I rebelled with comedy, actually, and that is how I actually got into directing comedy, was hearing all this BS from haters, right? Every time I would try to do I did a film. Oh, yeah, I produced a film. So I was actually producer and actress in it. And it was me and a really good friend of mine, like we're really close. And we weren't close at the time, but we got close through making the film. And they were just so caught up in, why are you and that white girl best friends? Huh? I was like, is that really coming from the judges? What does that mean?
Yeah.
We're like, we hang all the time. We're both artists. Like, we're thinking almost like how kids think. You know how kids think. Mm-hmm. They don't see color. They're like, oh, we both are artists. We both have the same favorite color. And we like to do this. Like, that's all we knew. Mm-hmm. We have the same sense of humor. It was a great time making the film. It was, and also, secondly, why didn't you hook up with any of the guys in the film? And I was like, why? Because there's a dude in there that I need to be with it. Like,
yeah,
so many ways, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, this doesn't need to happen. So I remember, like, afterwards, that's what led into me actually creating Cruise Control. And all I wanted was a comedy where a guy and a girl were together and they don't mess around. I'm being careful. Yeah. And that's all I wanted. I was like, I just want it to be funny. I want it to be a relatable subject. I'm going to go for it. Matter of fact, I'm going to direct it because I didn't trust them with my story. I was like, they're not going to get it. Mm-hmm. And then we created Cruise Control. I threw in for the judges this really hilarious kissing scene. But apparently my comedy ended up making people open their eyes like, wow, she had a black male lead who wasn't a villain or a criminal or doing something bad.
Exactly.
He had a love interest. He had aspirations. He wanted to do something with his life. Mm-hmm. His best friend was a white female, because that's still a minority. And she was intelligent and she was beautiful. Like, even though she's pretty, she didn't want to mess with him. She had her own aspirations. She had her own thing she wanted to do. And so, like, I mean, my friends, you did this on purpose, where it was like, you know, like everybody represented a different color. And like, no, I didn't mean to do that. Just how it worked out. Mm-hmm. But my mind just believes that we all live in the same world together. That's, you know, how I was brought up. So that's my norm. My norm is to have friends from different backgrounds. Mm-hmm. And so my films represented that. And people are like, oh, what a great diverse cast. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, honestly, all I want, when I auditioned the actor, he fit perfectly to me. I didn't see how he couldn't. Like, he was well-spoken, he was put together, and he was funny. He had great comedic timing. Done. And it became, you know, it's done really well. And so that became like my formula, like, oh, I can keep doing that then. Mm-hmm. And so my answer to the haters basically was to take all of their criticism, all that bullcrap they said.
Oh, yeah.
And then turn it into award-winning films instead. I was like, bye, thank you so much for all that hate. Like, this has been really good. I'm making gold now. Like, so, yeah, that's my answer to it all. It's like, just keep creating and proving them wrong while having fun.
I also like how they basically took you being professional on set as friend zoning all the guys.
Yeah.
Hey, isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Why does the Black female character have to be over sexualized all the time?
That too.
I mean, that part. Yeah, like, why is that always us? We're either playing a slave, a teacher, or listen, I could go.
They were in bikinis, so automatically we must have wanted the D. So that was their idea. Was
thirsty for that D.
We looked good, so why not? And I'm like,
catching charges for that D. No, we got stuff right there.
No, yeah, I put aliens instead. They didn't like me very much.
And I'm just crazy. I'm just going to cut people.
Right. I did. Hey, we did have plot twists. I didn't care.
So moving to the next question. Have you ever experienced or seen sexism, racism, and just any gender issues on a set that you've been on, or on a project you've been involved in? Have you experienced it? Have you seen it? If you would like to share the story with us, we'd love to hear it. And how did you address it?
That's such a weird thing to think about, because, like, I mean, to a certain degree, I've seen that on most of the sets I've been on. Mm-hmm. You know, even one of my productions, one of my earlier productions, we had a guy who was going around who was just blatantly like hitting on several girls and making them extremely uncomfortable, and doing stuff like taking things out of girls' hands and stuff like that. And I didn't even I only heard about this at the end of the day, but he was fired immediately afterwards. You know, but yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm trying to think if I've ever, as someone who's disabled, no, I haven't dealt with that on a film set. Prior to that, I've certainly seen it, but I wouldn't say I've been, you know, I mean, I've had a couple of directors who've been like, wow, you're really cute, you know, but nothing past that. So, I mean, that would be my experience. But in terms of seeing it all the time, I mean, it's out there all the time. And, you know, it's the more subtle it gets, the more dangerous it gets. So even with my friends' sets, when I go out to their shoots, we run into stuff like that all the time. And you have to kind of watch out for it, and you have to call people out on it. It's just that simple. And more so, I think, I'm going to say this, I think white people need to be better about calling other white people out on things, and guys need to be better about calling other guys out on what's sexist, because there's so much of a just go along with it mentality in film, and in, you know, and in all the arts, like in all the arts, there's so much of a, okay, well, I got to follow these instructions because this is what the director said, and blah, 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 you know, but it doesn't always have to be like that, you know. Yeah. We got to be able to say we got to be able to say what's true no matter what.
Yeah, without fear of losing your job or being labeled as a problematic. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had the major disadvantage throughout my entire career of never being afraid of being fired. You know, and I've never been fired either, but I also have no problem telling my boss what I think, you know, so, and that's gotten me into trouble a couple times, but, you know, it's one of those I walk away feeling better about myself. So, but yeah, I mean, like, and you know, my earlier story about my friend who was constantly cast as villains, that's rampant. I mean, and that's, you know, one of the things I always say to people is go watch, you know, Equilibrium is a great example. You know, you watch Equilibrium, and within 5 minutes, as soon as you see Taye Diggs on camera, you're like, he's going to be the bad guy, because that is the thing we've established in Hollywood as the way it is. And indie filmmakers do some of the exact same things. You know, we all do it, and so we need to kind of like be aware that we're doing it and stop it. So that's, you know, or at least that's my experience. So
when do I not have an experience? So somebody had told me to put a better headshot on my Facebook page. This was a while ago, so I did. And I now have 135 friend requests just sitting there. Whenever I have accepted these friend requests, I always ask the person, why do you want to be friends? Because I'm a networker. I don't just hand out my business card. I'm going to have a relationship with you. So if you're not comfortable having a relationship, then get the hell off of my page. They often say, oh, but you're an actress, aren't you? Aren't you looking for work? Just because I look pretty. Just because I'm a woman. And I say, no, I'm a composer. I write music. Oh, like pop songs and things? No, like John Williams. Actually, James Newton Howard is probably one of my biggest influences. And I spoke to him a couple weeks ago. Sorry, I have to brag about that. But that shows the idea of networking. Okay, that's how important it is. And so other experience, and I'll say that with being a woman, but also being young. When I first came to Charlotte, and I'm moving back from Los Angeles, I needed work. And I realized that there wasn't much of a market for me as a composer. So I had to create the market for myself. And that is, and will always be, through education, right? I go around and I teach people how to work with a composer. Please hire me, right? But whenever I would meet people, because the people that I would meet tended to be older Caucasian males, because there's a lot of them. And a lot of them are given the bigger or the more, how do I say, the more advanced work, right? It's topper, more money, right? They get, whether it's commercial or higher productions or whatever, whether it's the director, producer, editor, whatever. And when I would meet with these people, they see me and the first thing they ask me, so how would you like my help? As if I'm just sitting aside and I'm begging for work. I said, I'm not begging for work. Actually, I'm not even begging for your work. All I want to know is, who the heck are you, and are you actually worth knowing? Because I need to know if I should include you in my network, because that's what's going to help me get work. And so every person that I meet for lunch, coffee, whatever, we usually have a 2 to 3 hour conversation. I need to know if this person is sane and worth collaborating with. But what's interesting is that it's the body language that I notice. The first few minutes, they look at me like, what's this chick got to do? What could she possibly offer? And by the end of the conversation, they're like this. Or, very intent, focused look. It went from indirect to very passive to very aggressive, right? And in tune. And that is because I was teaching them my process and what it means to be a composer. Not what it means to be a woman or a young woman in this industry. No, what does it mean to be a composer? That is my brand. And what it means to be a professor, because I obviously taught them quite a few things. Mm-hmm. So by the end of it now, they're like, this girl knows what she's talking about. And not just this girl, this person knows what she's talking about. This composer knows what she's talking about. Mm-hmm. So that's been my experience and continues to be my experience until, you know, it's dying off because everybody within the network is talking and saying, don't look at her for being young or a woman or whatever, because she actually has more experience than the majority of the composers you know in about a 2,000-mile radius. So anyway, giving myself bragging points for that. Okay. I fight for it, damn it.
Like
I want to add to Christina's thing. I really like that you said sane. Is this person sane? Mm. So, because there are some crazies out there. Ooh. For me, like, it's been more, I've gotten it a lot more with makeup that I have with acting, because when I go in for a role, it's already listed what it is, what they expect, stuff like that sometimes. But for makeup, when I apply for a job or whatever, and I send my portfolio in, I mean, they see my name, they're like, oh, it's a girl. And then I send them, you know, special effects stuff if it's for a horror film or for something like that. And they're just like, oh, did you make those prosthetics? Like, yeah, I sculpted them. I made a mold. I poured them and I applied them. Like, and that's the one thing as a makeup artist. And this is one thing that a lot of people will tell you. I was in a master class this past week with two very, very big makeup artists. And they said, you have to be versatile. You can't just be the beauty makeup artist. You can't, I mean, you can, but then the set has to hire 2 makeup artists. Instead, they could hire 1 and you're more marketable. You're more sellable for that.
You could only do romance.
Yeah. Can only make them look pretty. I just powder their nose. I'm good. No. But that was the one thing too. And getting into makeup, I was more interested in the gore, the horror movies and stuff like that. That's what drew me into it. So it's one of those things where the beauty makeup came later because I was that tomboy girl that was watching those films and going, oh, how did they rip that dude's spine out? Instead of, oh, how did they do her cat eyeliner? You know, stuff like that.
Like
so that was not,
yeah,
like, you know, I have winged eyelids. How can I do this correct? You know, stuff like that. So that wasn't really what I was interested in. I was more interested in the spooky gore, stuff like that. And so it's one of those things where they look at you, and I've been on set doing, you know, prosthetics and everything else, and past just zombies because that was the hot thing, you know, a while ago. But doing other types of makeup, they're just like, oh my gosh, where did you guys like figure this out and learn this? It's like, I took classes, I watched videos, I studied, I did what any other person would do for this. And then I did it over and over and over and perfected my craft like anyone else would. So it's one of those things where you get that kind of, oh, you're pretty. What? So.
Asha.
I'm just reacting to everything and little mind blown that people forget that we are still professionals. Like, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, gone are the days where before we're like, you're a girl, you can't go to that school. So we're past this already. I really thought. Where are we? So what I wanted to mention actually was more about disabilities, especially when it comes to ironically, I kind of wrote them down before I came into this because I actually have a couple of people I've been, you know, producing for a while, and a couple of either the writers that I've worked with or directors that I've supported and been on their team, like we dealt with, you know, some people who are absolutely amazing and they're diabetic, absolutely amazing, and they have sickle cell. Actually, one of my favorite writers. We've collaborated on so many things, and she has sickle cell, and I do everything my ability when I'm supporting on her set for, you're not supposed to know that. It doesn't really matter. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that doesn't really matter. And then it comes out later when we go to panels and talk about what it's like having to work in the breaks because you're thinking about all of the people on crew, especially above the line. So And I also too have, I have my own disabilities as well. So it's kind of like, I always look for people I can actually trust with that vulnerability. Like you said, we're really vulnerable in our craft. I mean, and I'm a woman and I'm of color, and then observing, religious holidays and all that. They're like, what? And of course, those, assumptions of what I do based on looks. I don't even go there. But it's, I guess, because of the great people I've worked with those backgrounds have made me more aware. And I think that's all we're asking people to do, is be more aware of what you do, how you treat people, be respectful, know their story. That's what Trinity always teaches all the time. She talks about how to actually properly network is actually caring about other people. If we start caring about other people, we'll actually learn that they have values and they've learned really cool things, like Angela said, or that they have a lot to offer, or, people might look at Adam and be like, he must be difficult to work with. And they don't know him,
So, yeah. All right. But.
There's like all this prejudging before even getting to know somebody. So yeah, that's because we really went into really cool, different stories of how we've been impacted. And I just wanted to talk about also the positive side of it all. It's just, if we are aware and we start caring more, that's how we able to include more people and do great things.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? I think that is out, because I have like a couple more questions, but they're loaded, man. I'm not going to do it. It's getting late. So I think on that positive, beautiful note, we shall end this here. Thank you guys for doing this, chatting with me. I greatly appreciate it. Yay us.